Thank you very much for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about what's new in Sage 100 production management from the 2022 release of Sage 100 ERP. Let's go ahead and take a look at our agenda. First thing is they made some changes in inventory management, and you'll only see these changes if you have production management installed and enabled in the company. But they've added some procurement methods. They've changed the label of the routing number field to template number. They've added a column for on work ticket quantity, and they've added a column for required for work ticket quantity. So we'll take a look at those. Next, we're going to talk about some changes that were made in production management setup, including the fact that the production management installation is no longer a separate installation. It's now included in the installation files that are used to install Sage 100 2022. Prior to that, you had to click on a link, go to another website, and download the product from there. That's no longer true. They've added an option for number of years to retain work ticket history. There's an option to integrate with General Ledger. There's a dynamic materials checkbox. And there's a new tab in setup called user-defined fields. Some changes have also been made in work ticket entry. So first of all, the bill number and template number is now on the header of the work ticket entry screen. There are options for labor issue method and material issue methods that now have drop downs. You can now create work ticket memos, and you can also create memos for work ticket steps. When you copy from, there are now options to only copy from open work tickets or work ticket history. You no longer have the option to copy from the bill and bill of materials or from the template. Labor entry has been changed, simplified the data entry screen by using dual grid data entry for a single day, so you can enter multiple work tickets on the entry screen. The option to update to payroll is now actually in the payroll module, which means the periodic labor register, which used to be used to update the information to payroll, no longer does that. Because of that, they've renamed it to the periodic labor report. And lastly, the material where used inquiry now has an option to look at work tickets or at templates. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. We'll start with the changes in inventory management. So here we are in Sage 100 version 2022. I'm going to go to inventory management, and you can look at the information obviously between item maintenance and item inquiry, but I'll go to item maintenance, and I'm just going to call up this particular item and show you under procurement. You now have make to stock. So if it's a parent item that's being made in production management, you can specify that it is a make to stock. If it's an item that you're just going to buy, you could specify it's buy to stock or buy to order. So you have make to stock, buy to stock, or buy to order. I'm assuming that these options will be important when Sage releases the new version of the Inventory Requirements module, IRP, Inventory Requirements Planning module, to replace MRP. While we're here, we can look at the grid, and we can see there are the two columns that I mentioned earlier. There's on work ticket for parent items and required for work ticket for components. Let's go ahead and call up a parent item, take a look at that. So if I'm looking at this parent item, an item that we're going to make, you can see that we have 25 on work tickets. Now if I go to the orders tab, you can see those work tickets over here. And then if it's a component, as we just saw, but we'll do it again, we can see that the quantity required for work ticket is there. So I have requirements. So this has to do with open work tickets. So when you enter a work ticket and release it, it becomes an open work ticket. So you can see those information. Lastly, if we look at the additional tab, what used to be labeled with the work order module as routing number is now labeled with template number. So if I do a lookup here, I see all of my production management templates. And I can specify which template is included for this particular item. So now let's take a look at the changes that have been made in production management setup options. So let's go to production management, and I'm going to go to the setup section and open up production management options. So the first thing we're going to notice is that we can set the number of years to retain work ticket history. The default is 5 years, which is new for 2022. All of the defaults for number of years to retain history has been upped from 2 years to 5. And so it's following that convention, but we can obviously change that to a higher number. We do have an option to check a box to have production management integrate with general ledger. This is also following convention for other modules. And on the entry tab, we have an option for dynamic materials, what we used to call dynamic inventory in production management. But the biggest change in the setup is you now have this user-defined tab where you can define the user-defined fields to be used in production management. So you don't need to use custom office to create the user-defined fields. And so here you would define the class, the description, the code length, which is the answer to the question, what kind it is, and the description length. Once this is defined, also in setup, you have user-defined info codes maintenance, and you would do a lookup here and select your code class and specify the values that could be used in that user-defined field. So again, this particular example, we said that the field can be up to 3 characters in length and the description can be up to 40 characters. So that's what we see here. So on work tickets, we'll be able to enter this information. So now let's take a look at some changes that have been made in work ticket entry. So let me go to production management main and go to work ticket entry. And let's create a new work ticket. So I'm just going to use the pound button for the next available work ticket number. Go ahead and accept the date, all of these things. And I'll go ahead and select my item code. So I'll make it the desktop 0200. Now notice when I do that, it pulls in the template number as well. So what used to be true is that you used to have to push the copy from button and then select the bill number and bill of materials, or to select the template. Now you can select the bill from bill of materials by doing the lookup here instead of the item code, and it'll pull the template in automatically, or you can select the template as well. So they've made it a lot easier in this data entry. Well, let's go ahead and cancel this. I just want to call up an existing work ticket so we can take a look at it. So let me call this one up. So notice that our memo button has our yellow tint to it, which means there is at least one memo for the work ticket. And we can call that up and take a look at it. You'll notice also on the header that you have the drop down for the issue methods for both labor and materials. And you'll also notice that you have this attachments button, and you can add additional attachments and have categories for attachments that you define, and then you can create your attachments here as well. Well, let's go to the Steps tab. And as you can see here, as I highlight a step, you have a memo button here where you can create memos specifically for that particular step. Once again, let's cancel just to come back in again as another option here and show you what the copy from does. So because we now have the bill and the template available to us on the header, we no longer have that in the copy from. So if you do a copy from, you now have limited options there to only be able to copy from either open work tickets that are not in history, or work tickets that are in history. Now we're going to talk about changes made to the labor entry screen. Back in Sage 100 now, we're going to go to Production Management, the Time section, and go to Labor Entry. I'll go ahead and select my batch. Obviously, you would create a batch here, but we're going to have a date. So this is the date for all of the labor entries. So I'm just going to tab out of that, and it's going to take me to the transaction type field, and it's going to default to labor entry, but I can choose any of these other types. And because I'm on labor entry, I would select an employee, select my work ticket, my step number, department number, and put in the start and end dates and times and all that kind of stuff, or just put in the hours worked, however I have that defined. That's not new, but notice that we have this dual grid. So we have fields that can be dragged from the primary grid to the secondary grid, or vice versa. And we can see values in the secondary grid. And I can just keep entering additional labor entries for whatever work tickets I want. So instead of having a separate screen for each work ticket, I just have a separate row for each work ticket. Let's go ahead and cancel that. Also notice that the report, as I mentioned earlier, has been renamed from the periodic labor register to the periodic labor report, because it's not going to update. And I'm not going to show this to you, but if you do have your production management integrated with your Sage 100 payroll, if you do your labor entries in production management and you want to pull those into payroll, you would do that in the payroll module. In payroll data entry, there's a button for labor. You push the button and it will pull in those labor entries. Lastly, we're going to take a quick look at the material where used inquiry in production management. We're going to go to Production Management, Inquiries, and Material Where Used Inquiry. And let's go ahead and call up a component item. And so as you can see here, we have two tabs now. You can look at the inquiry for what's on work tickets, or you can look at the inquiry on what is on templates. So you can choose which inquiry you're looking for to figure out if you're going to make a change. Then you know that you need to make the change on the work tickets and or the templates. Okay, as a recap of our agenda, we talked about changes in production management that have impacted inventory management for item maintenance and item inquiry. We went through some production management setup and talked about new options that are there. We also looked at work ticket entry, both by looking at an existing work ticket and creating new work tickets, and the fact that we now have the bill, the item and bill, and the template on the header tab. Plus we have those memos that can be created for work tickets and work ticket steps. We looked at labor entry and saw that we could enter multiple labor entries for a single working day. And then lastly, we looked at material where used inquiry. You can see our contact information here for NIMS & Associates. You can email us at erp@nimsassociates.com or call the number on the screen. We'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to our channel so you would get notifications of new content as they occur. And lastly, we want to thank you for your time and your attention. Please let us know if there's any topics that you would like to see us discuss in these sessions. Thank you again.